This morning, police are searching for a Texas mother who mysteriously disappeared before Harvey hit.
Objective is just to get Crystal back home.
He was the person that...
Do you know where the body is? And he just looked away from me and just bawled his eyes out. And at that point, I knew. He knew where they were.
The last 48 hours. A hurricane, a missing mother, and the truth behind Crystal's disappearance. Asterisk. The surveillance camera captures her final moments of freedom, 7:10 a.m., August 25th, 2017. Crystal McDowell walks through the doorway, radiating that infectious light she was known for, completely unaware that she has less than 2 hours to live. Before you discover what happens next, make sure you're subscribed because this true crime story will take you through the most crucial 48 hours of an investigation that almost never happened. Asterisk. Crystal McDowell always had a great spirit about her. She knew what she wanted, and she went for it. Whether it was jumping out of a perfectly good airplane or building her career as a real estate agent after 10 years as a flight attendant, Crystal approached life with fearless enthusiasm. Her friend described her perfectly. She was obviously very beautiful, very attractive, but there was something about her she radiated light. At 37 years old, Crystal seemed to be entering the happiest chapter of her life. Just 2 days before she vanished, she posted on Facebook, "I've never been happier in my whole life than I am right now. God is so good." She had recently started dating John Hargrave, a local jewelry store owner, and their relationship felt like a fresh start. They talked about trips to Europe, about Belgium next month, about a future together. But happiness, as Crystal would discover in the most tragic way possible, can be the most dangerous thing when someone refuses to let you go. Friday morning, August 25th, 2017. The Texas coast braced for impact as Tropical Storm Harvey strengthened, preparing to make landfall as a hurricane. Across southern Texas, grocery store shelves emptied as people rushed to stock up on last-minute supplies. Hurricane warnings stretched along most of the coastline. Everyone who could leave was leaving. Everyone who stayed was preparing for the worst. Crystal had spent Thursday night with her new boyfriend, John Hargrave, at his home in Baytown. The surveillance footage from his house shows her walking through the living room at 7:09 a.m. that Friday morning, looking relaxed and content. 1 minute later, at 7:10 a.m., another camera captures her car leaving his driveway. She was heading back to the house she was temporarily sharing with her ex-husband, Stephen McDowell, and their 2 children, 8-year-old Ethan and 5-year-old Sophia. At 7:01 a.m., Stephen had texted her, "On my way. Do you have water? Looks like I may stay here with the kids. It seems just like rain." Crystal was supposed to pick up the children and take them to safety before the storm hit. It was a simple plan, one she had communicated clearly. But at 9:30 a.m., according to Stephen, she sent another text saying she had changed her mind. She would stop by, pick up the kids, and take them to Dallas instead. That text message would be the last anyone ever heard from Crystal McDowell. By that afternoon, her new boyfriend, Paul, was starting to worry. "She sent me a few text messages, and I replied back, but I never got a reply after that," he recalled. "So I thought maybe she was just preoccupied with getting ready for the storm." But Crystal's uncle, David Walters, knew something was wrong immediately. Crystal texted him every morning. She sent messages throughout the day. She was one of the most responsible people he knew. She never lost contact with family. "I get messages from her every morning. I get messages all throughout the day," David told investigators, his voice tight with worry. When Friday passed with no word from Crystal, he knew in his gut that something catastrophic had happened. Asterisk, Chambers County Sheriff's Office. Asterisk, asterisk. My niece. No one can get a hold of her. No one has heard from her. I'm really concerned. Asterisk. David Walters made the call that would launch one of the most challenging investigations in Chambers County history. The timing could not have been worse. Hurricane Harvey was about to slam into the Texas coast with devastating force. It's a serious storm. It's going to last 4 or 5 days, and quite frankly, this is day 1 this morning, the dispatcher explained, trying to manage expectations while the entire region prepared for catastrophe. Within hours, the investigation began, but so did the hurricane. Sheriff Brian Hawthorne knew immediately that this was no ordinary missing persons case. "Automatically, as a sheriff, I know that mothers don't leave their children," he said. "And there's obviously never a good time for anybody to become missing, but the timing was terrible." The storm hit with fury. Baytown picked up 32.9 inches of rain. Entire neighborhoods disappeared underwater. People climbed onto their roofs, desperate for rescue. The house is totaled, furniture destroyed, lives upended. It was horrible, the rain would not stop. And somewhere in all that chaos, Crystal McDowell had vanished. We had deputies that were flooded out of their homes, District Attorney Patricia Liek recalled. One of our investigators lost his entire house. Our local Texas Ranger and his wife were flooded out of theirs. And yet they showed up for work every day, all day, looking for this woman. The investigation began with a growing list of people to question. Crystal had been extremely social. She had lots of friends from her years as a flight attendant and her newer career in real estate. But 3 men quickly rose to the top of the suspect list. First, there was David Walters himself, the uncle who raised Crystal after her parents died when she was 11. He was the person who reported her missing, extremely emotional, pushing hard for answers. But then he started getting in the way of the investigation. He was the person that was extremely emotional and reported her missing. But then he kept getting in the way, Sheriff Hawthorne explained. David went through Crystal's townhouse with other family members, potentially tainting important evidence. The family even hired a private investigator. This is not a game to us. This is not a hobby. This is what we do, the sheriff said, frustrated. You don't bring on some amateur super sleuth wannabe when you're in the middle of a missing persons investigation. Second, there was John Hargrave, the new boyfriend. He was the last person to see Crystal alive, according to his home security footage. But when investigators asked for that footage, they were shocked to learn that John had already shared it, not with law enforcement, but with the media. Immediately, we're like, well, why would he be turning it over to the media? But yet my investigators don't have that, Sheriff Hawthorne said, his suspicion growing. Obviously, every hour that ticked off, he became the sheriff's person of interest, that's for sure. And third, there was Stephen McDowell, the ex-husband Crystal was still living with in a house she had helped him buy. Their divorce had been finalized just 2 months earlier, in June 2017, after 10 years of marriage. Everyone described it as amicable. Stephen told investigators he was fine with the divorce, that everything was hunky-dory. But was it really? Asterisk, this is a true crime case about lots of secrets, double lives on many people's parts. It's one of those cases where I think I've seen it all and then I've never seen anything like this before. Asterisk. As the floodwaters rose and the investigation intensified during those critical first 48 hours, one question dominated every conversation. Where is Crystal McDowell's car? Her black Mercedes was missing, just like she was. In the chaos of Hurricane Harvey, finding a single vehicle seemed impossible. But Crystal's family refused to give up. They drove through flooded streets, checked parking lots, asked everyone they knew. Then, a break. A friend spotted the Mercedes in the parking lot of a Motel 6, sitting in water that had risen so high during the storm that the car couldn't be moved. Sheriff Hawthorne arrived at the scene, and what he found immediately raised red flags. You could get in the car because it was unlocked, and the keys were sitting on the console, he said. My criminal investigation captain told me, I feel like it's been staged, set up for someone to take it. Someone had left Crystal's car there, keys visible, unlocked intending for it to be stolen, but the hurricane had flooded the parking lot before anyone could take the bait. It was finally a break in law enforcement's direction. I will give the family credit for finding that vehicle, Sheriff Hawthorne acknowledged. Now they knew where the car was, but who put it there, and what would they find inside? The Mercedes was towed from the motel and processed, but floodwaters in Houston made it impossible to get results back from the crime scene lab quickly. A lot of their majors and captains and sergeants and investigators' homes were going underwater, the DA explained. It was chaos for everybody. While they waited for forensic results, investigators dug deeper into the lives of their 3 suspects. And what they found about Stephen McDowell began to paint a very different picture from the cooperative, friendly ex-husband he pretended to be. Katie Adams, Crystal's good friend and a bail bondsman, had watched the marriage deteriorate over the years. Judging from the things that she said, Stephen is a very, very self-centered, selfish, manipulative person, Katie told investigators. The relationship had been troubled from the start. Just 1 year after they married, in 2007, Crystal filed for divorce, but she didn't go through with it. Why? Because Stephen had made threats. It was always like, well, if you leave me, I'm just going to kill myself, Katie revealed. Emotional blackmail, he knew what to say and what to do. Stephen's own daughter, Amanda McDowell, admitted the relationship was toxic. Both weren't perfect, and they both had their issues. I just think that they were very toxic for each other and they made each other crazy. Whenever they were together, it was never a happy ending. When Crystal finally filed for divorce again in February 2017, Stephen's behavior became increasingly erratic. In March, Amanda noticed strange activity on her father's Facebook account. He changed his profile pictures. It was a grave, and then it was a Grim Reaper, and then he made it a picture of him and Crystal, and then he took that off. Within days of the divorce filing, Crystal called 911. Stephen had taken their children and disappeared for several days. He made allegations and threats that he would harm himself, Crystal, and the kids. The children were eventually returned unharmed, and no charges were filed. But the incident revealed the depth of Stephen's obsession. He had such a passion of love for her that it was almost unhealthy, explained Linda Serrett, Crystal's aunt. It was almost like an obsessive, controlling love. Friends and family painted a picture of a man who waited on Crystal hand and foot during their marriage, rubbing her feet, brushing her hair, catering to her every need. Is it fair to say she wore the pants in the family? An investigator asked. Yes, most definitely, Linda confirmed. But over time, Crystal grew frustrated. He didn't challenge her, Linda explained. She wanted to be the best she could possibly be, and Stephen was okay with just stepping back, being the house person. She was more of the provider. The divorce should have been final, clean, done. But Stephen had other plans. He told Linda that he planned to propose to Crystal again during the family cruise they were supposed to take together. He had bought white clothes for both of them, a white dress for her, a white suit for himself. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a romantic gesture to win her back. Except Crystal had just disinvited him from the cruise because of her new boyfriend, John Hargrave. Should stress to me that he was pretty upset about that, John told investigators, describing Stephen's reaction to being excluded from the trip, but there was more at stake than just romance. Crystal had been Stephen's financial lifeline. She paid for everything, and recently, she had decided to cut him off. She was a financial meal ticket to him, Katie Adams explained. He was just spending money, just ridiculously spending money. And at that point, she just said, I can't do this anymore, Stephen. DA Patricia Leake summarized it perfectly. Stephen was probably more upset about not going on the cruise because he thought they were going to rekindle their romance. But it wasn't just losing her. It was losing his whole life. Someone else was sliding into his position, his whole lifestyle. As the investigation entered its second week and the floodwaters finally began to recede, investigators received access to security footage that would change everything. A camera at a Shell gas station next door to the Motel 6 had captured something extraordinary. The video showed a figure getting out of a vehicle near the motel. The person was putting something in the trash can, stuffing it all the way down to his elbow. It looked like clothing. Deputies identified the person as Stephen McDowell, and it was what he kept glancing at that made investigators sit up and take notice. The Motel 6 Sheriff Hawthorne explained, pointing at the screen, you can see that he's looking over, and he's looking to see if the car is still there. And it was. Investigators recovered the trash can, but the contents had floated out because of the hurricane flooding. Another piece of evidence lost to the storm. Then came more security video, this time from the Motel 6 parking lot itself. It showed someone parking Crystal's Mercedes and someone who resembled Stephen getting out of it. What does that say to you? An investigator asked Sheriff Hawthorne. It says that my person of interest has changed, the sheriff admitted. I'm the one that's still looking at John Hargrave, but this is purely circumstantial evidence. For the first time in this true crime investigation, all the investigators were heading in the same direction. Stephen McDowell. They brought him in for questioning. He stuck to his story. Crystal never showed up at the house that Friday morning. But when they gave him a polygraph test, Stephen failed. The next piece of evidence came from a Walmart near the motel. Security cameras showed Stephen buying a bicycle and riding it out of the store. Investigators believed this was how he got home after ditching Crystal's car at the motel. We had him buying the bike and riding it out, DA Leake confirmed. This was the evidence that finally brought the case home for prosecutors. Now they just needed one more thing. Crystal's body. Sheriff Hawthorne made a controversial decision. He enlisted Crystal's aunt, Linda Serrett, to stay close to Stephen. I said, Linda, I need you to stay close to Stephen. We need communication, and he may not communicate with us, and he may communicate with you. Linda agreed. Every day I was just praying that he would say something, she recalled. Meanwhile, investigators were becoming increasingly frustrated. When you have no body, that's a huge hindrance, DA Leake explained. The way someone's killed where they're found that generally can give you an idea of who killed them. They called upon Texas EquiSearch, a volunteer search and rescue organization, to help find Crystal. Let's remember that this place flooded real bad, the search coordinator told volunteers. So if she was dumped in this area, let's hope that she got washed up in maybe some tree lines and stuff, did not end up in the water. John Hargrave joined the searchers. David Walters pitched in and offered a $10,000 reward. John offered $5,000 more. But the breakthrough did not come from the searches. It came from psychology. Investigators brought Stephen in day after day, wearing him down, telling him they were gathering more and more evidence. He was just like melting, DA Leck recalled. You could see that it was getting to him. You could tell he wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping. His face had sunk in. Then, in a calculated move, DA Leek convinced Family and Protective Services to remove Stephen's children from his home and place them with Linda Surratt. We knew psychologically that would be the final straw for him, Leek explained. His kids being gone, he would have nothing left. Stephen's reaction was exactly what they predicted. He just about collapsed, the DA said. Exhausted, Stephen said he wanted to go home but promised he would return in the morning. I'll tell you everything, he said. Without enough evidence to arrest him, and knowing a full confession was their only real chance of finding Crystal's body, Sheriff Hawthorne made an extraordinary decision. He let Stephen walk out the door. That was a big risk that he wouldn't run or kill himself, an investigator noted. It was a risk, Hawthorne admitted. But see, this is the thing, we had the kids. A few hours after his children were taken from him, Stephen summoned his older daughter, Amanda, to come home from Texas A&M University immediately. It was 3:30 inches the morning when she arrived. He told me that at 10 a.m. the Rangers were going to come pick him up, Amanda recalled. At first, her father seemed more annoyed than anything. She asked him repeatedly if he was guilty, and he would just be like, "No, I just don't understand why I'm getting blamed." The entire time, he pleaded to me his innocence. Stephen gave Amanda photo albums, financial statements, even the keys to his beloved Mustang. Then the conversation took an abrupt turn. He looks at me and he says, "The Rangers told me that if I tell them where the body is, they'll lessen my punishment," Amanda remembered, her voice shaking. And I said, "Well, you don't know where the body is. How would you know?" And he was like, "What if it's true?" I asked him, "Do you know where the body is?" And he just looked away from me and just bawled his eyes out. And at that point, I knew he knew where it was. I asked him what he did over and over. I begged him to tell me, and he was just like, "I just can't tell you what I did." And then all of a sudden, we heard a noise, and he stood up and was like, "They're here." And then he's gone. Amanda dropped to her knees and cried. Saturday, September 9th, 2017, Stephen McDowell agreed to meet with Sheriff Hawthorne and the investigation team one more time. "My understanding from our communication was that you were kind of ready to be honest about some things," the investigator began. Stephen started talking. He described the morning Crystal came home after spending the night with John Hargrave. They got into an argument. "I think he was mad that she had stayed out all night," the investigator noted. "Is that when she told you that she didn't love you anymore? Is that when she told you she didn't want to be with you or have anything to do with you?" Stephen confirmed it was, and it seems that was enough for him to make a terrible choice. He describes and essentially shows that he strangled her from behind, so she had no idea he was coming, the investigator explained. "Like a chokehold or something?" another investigator asked. "Did you say anything when that was going on, or did you fight, or what happened?" "I just think I was scaring her," Stephen replied. "How did you eventually know that she was no longer alive?" "She stopped moving." "And what did you do after that?" "I covered her face with a bag. I tied her up and put her in trash bags and put her in the car." Early the following morning, Stephen drove off to dispose of Crystal's body, leaving their 2 children home alone. He led investigators to a densely wooded area off an access road, not far from his house. The cameras from 48 Hours were the only ones allowed at the crime scene as investigators began their arduous work. The terrain was pretty tough because it was a lot of work just trying to clear the trees and the limbs so that we could bring the body out, an investigator explained. At the end of a long search, the sheriff and DA shared a moment of relief. Today at 2:45 p.m., Crystal McDowell's body was discovered, and Stephen McDowell, 44, has been arrested and charged with murder, the sheriff announced. "If he had not told you exactly where the body was, would she have ever been found?" a reporter asked. "No," Sheriff Hawthorne replied simply. In June 2019, almost 2 years after Crystal's murder, Stephen McDowell went on trial. His defense claimed sudden passion that Crystal's death was the result of a spontaneous hug that got out of control. Under Texas law, if successful, this defense could mean as little as 2 years in prison. But DA Patricia Leek gave the jury a different point of view. "Do you think this was premeditated?" a reporter asked her. "Yes, without a doubt," she replied firmly. "And this was not just, he snapped. Well, he can snap and still think about it. I think he just decided if I can't have her, nobody can." After 5 days of testimony, evidence, and argument, the jury deliberated for only 3.5 hours before reaching a verdict: guilty. 1 day later, the same jury sentenced Stephen McDowell to 50 years in prison for the murder of his ex-wife. "We've been very fortunate the jury saw it the same way the law enforcement officers and the district attorney's office did," Leek said with satisfaction. With 50 years, he will have to serve at least 25 before he's eligible for parole. I hope he never makes it out of there. He deserves whatever he gets. But for Crystal's children, the verdict brought no real comfort. For the kids, it's just a sad situation all the way around, Sheriff Hawthorne reflected. Both parents are gone now, basically. Those kids are motherless and fatherless, just like Crystal was. It fell to Linda Surratt to tell 8-year-old Ethan and 5-year-old Sophia the truth about what happened to their mother. I just grabbed their hands and I said, "We found your mommy and she's in heaven and your daddy's in jail for taking your mother's life." And at that point, Ethan looked up and he said, "Okay, I can deal with this." And Ethan grabbed his sister and they hugged and he said, "I love you, Sophia. I will always take care of you." Amanda McDowell, Stephen's older daughter, promises to always be a part of their lives. I thought about my brother and sister, and I was like, they have no one. I need to be the bigger person right now, and I need to be the person they look up to. Crystal McDowell's story is a haunting reminder that the most dangerous time for someone trying to leave an abusive relationship is when they finally succeed. Stephen McDowell's obsessive love, the kind that looked like devotion but was really about control, turned deadly the moment Crystal truly moved on. The investigation itself became legendary in law enforcement circles, not just for the challenging conditions created by Hurricane Harvey, but for the dedication of officers who lost their own homes yet showed up every day to search for a woman they had never met. My gut tells me there's something catastrophically wrong with this scenario, Sheriff Hawthorne had said during those critical first 48 hours. His instincts were right. The couple's young children now live out of state with a family friend who is in the process of obtaining full legal custody. They are rebuilding their lives, carrying the weight of an unimaginable truth that the father who once made them laugh and played with them and cared for them had taken their mother's life in a moment of rage and possessiveness. Crystal loved her children with every part of her being. She wanted them to have wonderful lives, and those who knew her believe they will. "You think they'll be okay?" a reporter asked Linda Surratt. "I know they will be without a shadow of a doubt," she replied. Stephen McDowell will be eligible for parole in 2042 when he is 67 years old. Until then, he sits in a Texas prison cell, living with the consequences of those fatal minutes when he decided that if he could not have Crystal McDowell, no one could. The surveillance footage remains 7:10 a.m., August 25th, 2017. Crystal McDowell walking out into the morning light, driving toward a future she would never reach. Those images serve as a permanent reminder of a life full of promise, ended by the one person who claimed to love her most. Asterisk, if this true crime story moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more in-depth investigations. Share this video to help raise awareness about domestic violence and the warning signs that can save lives. And remember, love should never feel like control. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, please reach out for help. You are not alone. Asterisk, 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 case status. Asterisk, asterisk, Stephen McDowell is currently incarcerated in Texas, serving his 50-year sentence. Crystal McDowell's children are thriving in their new home, supported by family and friends who ensure their mother's memory lives on. The investigation remains one of the most complex and emotionally challenging cases in Chambers County history, a testament to the dedication of law enforcement officers who never gave up. Even when nature itself seemed determined to hide the truth,